Hello there, I'm Amos Kingsnake. I know, new name. The rebranding was a long time coming. However, that's not the point of this video. For those unaware, I am an avid Counter-Strike player. I know, I wonder how I can do this to myself too. But joking aside, yes, I have many an hour logged rushing bomb site B and getting one-tapped across both land and sea. I also happen to be a member of the LGBT and the furry community. I'm sorry, I'll stop. Which naturally means there's quite a bit of animosity thrown my way, no pun intended, by a lot of the, well, let's call them unsavory denizens of modern day CS2. So much so that many a lobby in this game will turn on you almost instantaneously the microsecond they catch a whiff of you exhibiting anything outside of heteronormative white guy energy. Doubly so if you happen to have your Sona proudly displayed for all to see. Naturally, that kind of behavior makes it hard for me to recommend getting into the game for any of my fellow furry friends or homosexual having homies. So I'd like to provide a small litany of console commands, tweaks, and tricks you can utilize to help reduce the power these schmucks can have to make your experience unenjoyable. Without further ado, this is my Amos Declassified Guide to Surviving CS2 as an LGBT individual in 2025. So step 1 to playing CS2 in the current year as a young homosexual lad, lady, or they, them, any is don't. Alright, being serious, actually the first tip to making your experience bearable is to understand your direct tools to temper the tempers of the intolerant toddlers. You have a decent number of options at your disposal just within the settings menu, but there are a few caveats to some of these options that I'd like to inform you of as to help give yourself the most optimal experience possible. On first glance, it might be tempting to just block absolutely everything and everyone out, muting everyone by default, removing all avatars, names, voice chat, text chat, essentially going full communications blackout. And while that will reduce the amount of toxicity you will be exposed to, it'll also make the game extremely lonely while potentially preventing you from discovering and connecting with the few scattered other LGBT or furry allies you might encounter out in the cesspool of Counter-Strike matchmaking. They do exist, and finding them will make your experience better, as queuing with friends does have a good number of benefits which I'll get to momentarily. So I'd personally recommend having these exact communication settings copied from the footage I'm showing on screen now. Player pings enabled with sound, mute enemy team and mute all but friends set to no, text filtering should be set to either filter all strong profanity including slurs or filter slurs, allow animated avatars should be set to yes, hide avatar images and custom items should be set to show all, and clean player names should be set to yes. The option to show avatars and custom items might be a bit of a head scratcher if you're watching and know anything about some of the vile shit people like to name and craft onto their guns. However, by choosing to show only friends' items, it prevents avatar images from initially showing on the scoreboard. And that's going to be your primary way of finding other people to play with outside of apps or already grandfathered in groups. Another question you might be asking is, why do you not have mute enemy team set to yes? The issue with that is that if you choose to mute the enemy team by default, it also blocks their avatars, and sometimes you might encounter a scenario where the enemy team are LGBT allies or furries, and I know in my experience, even if you're not on a team with a fellow furry, if you shoot them a friend request or just type in chat some of that primo furry cringe, more often than not, you will end up making a friend just by virtue of also being a furry or an LGBT individual, so long as your profile picture / bio gives off ally energy. There are a few tricks you can use to very quickly block everything out in the event that you happen to come across a lobby where not only are there no visible allies, you're getting big outright clan meeting vibes from those you have the misfortune of being stuck with for 3/4 of an hour. If you open up your scoreboard and then right-click, you'll be able to hover your mouse cursor over the top right corner of the board where you'll be able to click on this button that looks like a speaker. This will disable all voice comms in-game until you re-enable it, so you don't have to go through the tedious effort of clicking on each individual teammate and muting them all one by one. Note that you will have to manually uncheck this box if you want to hear comms in any future match. It does remember your preference. Next, if the text chat is being flooded with obscenities and / or Third Reich adjacent mannerisms, you can type this command into your console, accessed by first enabling console in your settings and then hitting the tilde key by default, ignore MSG, all one word. This will restrict all text-based messages in your match for its entire duration and will reset after each match, thankfully, so you don't have to keep reapplying it. I would recommend binding this command to a simple button on your keyboard, preferably a little out of the way so as to not take up a more valuable key slot, so that the second you start seeing any even mildly, or more likely majorly, toxic garbage being thrown at you, you can just obliterate it from existence. This command can also be used twice in succession in order to block only your teammates' messages, in the odd scenario where only your own team is toxic and the other team isn't. For example, if you happen to get queued up against a 5-stack of furries. Oh whoa. So those are the communications options, but what about the actual game part of the game? Well, that is what the next section is for. There are a few different things you should keep in mind when trying to keep any and all troll potential and conflicts to an absolute minimum when dealing with some of these homophobic scumbags. The first line of defense is always the aforementioned communication stifling described in the last section. Mute early, mute often, to quote this specific video by Afterthoughts. Much as it might be tempting to try to engage with the intolerant little dipshits and fight back, there is nothing you can do to change their minds. The last time a group of these fragile fascists rose up, we had to travel halfway across the world and bomb them all to hell and back just to get them to stop. You're not going to get whoever is in your lobby to reconsider their position on gay rights by just hitting them with a snappy quip during an A execute. So try your best to de-escalate, as difficult of an ask that might be. The second point to keep in mind when trying not to have your experience ruined is to understand some of the innate anti-trolling measures implemented in the game, and be able to react accordingly when people try to weaponize them against you. The first of these anti-trolling measures is the griefing auto ban, and there are a few ways to trigger this to happen. One of which is by causing too much team damage in one game, around 300 points of total damage to your teammates. And the second is killing 3 teammates, regardless of their remaining HP or of how they died. So what that translates to is, make sure you don't accidentally, or purposely, shoot a teammate, regardless of whether or not they shot you first, are body blocking you, etc., even if they were/still are instigating. It can add up over the course of the match to eventually get you removed from the game and have your account standing be penalized. A big thing to watch out for as a continuation of this last point, be extremely careful using further incendiary grenades or Molotovs in a match if you notice this message appear in the bottom of your screen. Insert your name here, attacked a teammate. This means that one of your teammates is most likely intentionally standing in your molly to attempt to rack up your team damage allowance. Even if all 300 team damage you cause is the result of teammates deliberately standing in your fire long after you've thrown it, you will still get banned from the match. Unfortunately, the system has no ability to exercise any amount of nuance. If you were listening to that last point and you were confused by the idea of body blocking, I'd like to briefly explain the concept, because it can and will upset you a lot and you should be prepared to experience it and not let it get to you as much as you can. Body blocking is when someone uses their character's game model in collision to stand in your way, either preventing you from going out of a door, properly counter-strafing, throwing the utility you want as you intend to, or just in general to mess up your flow or timings. Speaking from experience, you will feel a very strong urge to get upset at someone doing this to you, potentially even just TKing the culprit to get him to stop, but it will count towards your team damage and 3-kill limit, so I'd highly advise against it. It's the equivalent of having an annoying younger brother go, I'm not touching you, as he waves his grubby little digits in your face, and then telling on you to your mom when you thwack him in his dumb little forehead. Much as you want to, you'll just end up getting punished for smacking the tiddly-wheat imp while they get off scot-free. The second of these anti-trolling countermeasures that can be weaponized against you is the classic vote kick. And unfortunately, if someone calls a vote kick on you, there's no way to prevent anyone from voting yes if your teammates are staunch in their crusade for removing you from the match. So try not to panic. Don't feed them any more satisfaction for their griefing. Just say nothing and re-queue up if you feel up to giving the game another shot. It's extremely annoying, sure, but thankfully there are 2 counters to this built into the game. The first of which is just the innate drawback that comes from kicking one of your players from the match, i.e. the team that called the vote is going to be playing a permanent 4v5 every round with no compensation. And the second counter to this is the greatest antidote to any and all potential trolling that you have in CS2, the tried and true eternal elixir to irksome, intolerant, ingrate teammates, the Q-mate, or mates. As a disclaimer, I am more than aware that having and making friends is a monumental task for many people out there today, especially for many within the LGBT crowd, and especially with just how toxic the Counter-Strike community can be towards individuals like myself, and especially when you already have a lot of social anxiety by default. There are a few methods you can use to your advantage to filter out the undesirables and try to connect with like-minded individuals though, and those are the ones outlined earlier in this video. Ultimately, just remember that it's okay to take a break from the game if need be, and that you are valid in whatever peak, whatever purchased gun, whatever decision you choose to make in any match you play. You are not beholden to your teammates. It's matchmaking. There's nothing on the line outside of pointedly pointless points of elo, so don't let it stress you out too much. Is it annoying that you have been unfortunately saddled with the task of being a babysitter to a budding homophobic hate mob in what is supposed to be a silly 5v5 competitive shooter where you can play as an Australian man dressed like Casey Jones befriending chickens in between acts of terrorism? Yes, very much so. And I truly am sorry that the game is in the state that it is, no thanks to Valve for refusing to implement any type of chat or voice moderation at even the most basic level. My end goal with this guide is to help those of you LGBT, neurodivergent, and of any other oppressed group identity who feel the itch to queue up a match to also feel as happy and safe in your own skin as you deserve to be. To put it as succinctly and potently as possible, fuck the haters. You keep living your best life. And rush B to the sound of your own beat. On to the concluding thoughts now, though. That's about all I have to say for this production. I love this game, much as the community that plays it consistently disgusts me in ways so prolific as to be insufferable. By playing Counter-Strike, you are willingly signing yourself up to be dropped straight into the snake pit, and I guess the same could be said by subscribing to my channel, har har. So if you need to step away, or even if you decide that it's all too much to handle, that's okay, and you are valid for feeling that way. The racists and homophobes are scum, and I don't blame you for not wanting to deal with them. Valve doesn't either, apparently, since they seem allergic to handing out even the most basic of punishments for the most egregious of speech and behavior. Like seriously, they don't even ban the N-word, hard R and all. It's ridiculous. I'd recommend other things to play to scratch that CS2 itch, but there's really nothing else quite like Counter-Strike. And that's a good part of the reason I keep coming back, even despite how much I want to dropkick some of these slur-handling, fragile, ego, whitey man-children, because the game itself is a lot of fun, but it's only fun with the right safety nets in place. I've been Amos Kingsnake, and I thank you all very much for watching and enjoying my video. As always, burn your dread, and have a peaceful night. Go into the future, and I'll meet you there.
Wait, no, apps.
Weird. Below. Good shit. Nice shot.